June 6, 1944, Normandy, France, American First Army under General Dwight D. Eisenhower landed on Omaha and Utah beaches, targeting a lodgment to break Germany's Atlantic Wall. Corps metric American forces deployed over 150,000 troops across Normandy by day's end, supported by 5,000 ships. The morning sky over the English Channel churned with low clouds as American troops packed into landing craft faced waves that rocked their vessels and soaked their gear. Operation Neptune, the assault phase of Overlord, aimed to put the U.S. 1st Infantry Division and 29th Infantry Division on Omaha Beach, while the 4th Infantry Division hit Utah with the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions dropping inland. The German 7th Army, entrenched behind concrete bunkers and minefields, waited under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's coastal defense plan, expecting to shatter any invasion at the water's edge. American planners, however, built their strategy on overwhelming logistics, air superiority, and the ability to absorb losses while maintaining momentum. The beaches were not just sand, but a gauntlet of obstacles, barbed wire, and interlocking fire from German machine guns and artillery. At Omaha, the assault began in chaos. Landing craft drifted off course in strong currents, and many duplex drive tanks meant to swim ashore sank in rough seas, leaving infantry exposed. German defenders from the 352nd Infantry Division, positioned on bluffs, poured down fire, pinning American troops against the shingle. Casualties mounted as waves broke over men struggling to cross open sand. Engineers worked under fire to clear beach obstacles, using Bangalore torpedoes to blast paths through wire. Naval gunfire from U.S. destroyers closing to within 1,000 yards targeted German strongpoints, giving infantry a chance to move. By mid-morning, small groups of Americans led by junior officers found draws and slopes to climb the bluffs, outflanking German positions. The number that matters is persistence. American assault groups kept moving despite 50% losses in some units. Utah Beach, by contrast, saw a fortunate error. A current pushed the 4th Infantry Division's landing south of the planned zone into a less defended sector. Major General J. Lawton Collins, commanding the 7 Corps, assessed the ground and ordered the attack to proceed from the new position. This flexibility, built into American command, allowed troops to exploit weaker German defenses. Behind Utah, paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne, though scattered by night, drops seized causeways and bridges. Their actions blocked German counterattacks, ensuring the beachhead linked to the interior. Air support flew 2,000 sorties over Normandy by noon, suppressing German movement. The German facade of an impregnable coast began to crack as American troops, despite heavy losses, held ground and expanded inland. German commanders, caught off guard, believed the main invasion would still strike Pas-de-Calais. Their reserves, including panzer divisions, remained dispersed, delayed by Allied deception and air attacks. By nightfall, the American lodgment, though shallow, was continuous with British and Canadian sectors. The Atlantic Wall, designed to stop an invasion cold, faced a force that could land, fight through fire, and keep building strength. American logistics ensured over 150,000 troops and thousands of vehicles were ashore, within 24 hours a scale Germany could not match. The day's fighting showed that the United States could project power across an ocean and sustain it under the worst conditions, setting the stage for a campaign that would unravel Hitler's Western defenses. American forces, now ashore in Normandy on June 7, 1944, faced the task of expanding their fragile lodgment against a German defense determined to contain them. The U.S. First Army under Lieutenant General Omar Bradley aimed to link Omaha and Utah beaches, connect with British and Canadian sectors, and capture Cherbourg to secure a deep-water port. German forces, primarily the 7th Army under General Friedrich Dollmann, relied on the bocage terrain, dense hedgerows, and sunken lanes to slow the Allied advance. Corps metric American logistics delivered over 300,000 troops and 50,000 vehicles to Normandy by June 30th, outpacing German reinforcement. The bocage country, with fields enclosed by thick earthen banks topped with hedges, turned every advance into a close-quarters fight. German defenders, including elements of the 91st Infantry Division and Panzer Group West, used the terrain to sight machine guns and anti-tank weapons, forcing American infantry to clear fields one by one. U.S. units trained for open maneuver adapted slowly. Engineers fitted tanks with hedgerow cutters, steel prongs, welded to Sherman tank hulls to breach the bocage, allowing infantry and armor to move together. Artillery support, with over 500 guns ashore by mid-June, battered German positions, but the fighting remained grinding. The constraint was terrain. Each field could hide a German ambush, costing time and lives. Air superiority shaped the battlefield. Allied aircraft, including U.S. 9th Air Force fighter bombers, flew over 10,000 sorties in June, targeting German supply lines and troop movements. Bridges over the Seine and Loire rivers, critical for German reinforcements, were destroyed or damaged, isolating Normandy. German panzer divisions, such as the Panzer Lehr, lost mobility as fuel trucks burned under air attack. American logistics, by contrast, flowed steadily. Beachheads became supply hubs, with Mulberry harbors and temporary pipelines delivering fuel. By June 30th, the U.S. First Army had 300,000 troops ashore, supported by a stockpile of 1 million gallons of gasoline, ensuring sustained operations. German command faltered under pressure. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel pushed for mobile defense, but Hitler's orders tied panzer reserves to his direct control, delaying their deployment. The German perspective at this turning point: Allied planes hunted our tanks relentlessly, strangling movement before counterattacks could form. Confusion in the German high command, compounded by Allied deception operations, suggesting a second invasion at Pas-de-Calais, kept significant forces away from Normandy. When the 21st Panzer Division finally moved, it arrived piecemeal, disrupted by airstrikes and American artillery. The German hope of driving the Allies into the sea faded as the lodgment grew deeper. Human effort defined the American advance. Infantrymen, often fighting in small squads, cleared hedgerows with grenades and bayonets, supported by tanks that blasted paths through the foliage. Medics operated under fire, stabilizing wounded in ditches before evacuation. Navy beachmasters coordinated supply landings, ensuring ammunition and rations reached the front despite German shelling. Paratroopers still holding key junctions, linked with advancing ground units, solidifying the beachhead's interior lines. These actions, often led by sergeants or lieutenants, showed the American system's reliance on initiative when plans broke down. By late June, Cherbourg fell to the U.S. 7th Corps, giving the Allies a port to accelerate supply flow, though German demolitions delayed its full use. The fighting's intensity revealed both sides' limits. German units, stretched across multiple fronts, could not replace losses as quickly as the Americans could reinforce. U.S. divisions, however, faced exhaustion and high casualties, over 20,000 by June's end, testing morale in the bocage's claustrophobic fields. Yet American industrial output and training pipelines ensured fresh troops and equipment arrived steadily. The lodgment, now over 30 miles deep in places, linked American, British and Canadian sectors into a continuous front. This set the stage for a breakout, as the German 7th Army, battered and under-resourced, struggled to hold a line against an opponent that could replace losses and maintain pressure. Section 3. Breakout and Pursuit. Operation Cobra and the Falaise Pocket. Previous. Section. Text. This set the stage for a breakout, as the German 7th Army, battered and under-resourced, struggled to hold a line against an opponent that could replace losses and maintain pressure. By late July 1944, the American First Army, under Lieutenant General Omar Bradley, prepared to shatter the German defensive line in Normandy with Operation Cobra, a concentrated offensive south of St. Lo. The objective was to break through the bocage, exploit open terrain, and encircle German forces, paving the way for a rapid advance into France. German defenders, now including remnants of Panzer Group West and the 7th Army, were stretched thin, their reserves depleted by weeks of attrition. Core metric American forces deployed over 300,000 troops in Cobra, supported by 2,000 aircraft sorties on July 25. The plan for Cobra hinged on overwhelming force. On July 25, over 1,500 U.S. bombers and fighter bombers saturated a narrow sector of German lines with bombs and napalm, targeting defences held by the Panzer Division and other units. The bombardment, one of the largest of the war, ruptured German positions, though some American troops suffered casualties from errant bombs, infantry and armour from the U.S. The 7th Corps, led by Major General J. Lawton Collins, surged forward, exploiting gaps. Sherman tanks equipped with hedgerow cutters moved in tandem with infantry covering 5 miles in the first day. The number that matters is speed. American units advanced 10 miles in 3 days, outpacing German attempts to reform. German commanders under Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge struggled to respond. Hitler's orders prohibited withdrawal, forcing divisions to hold ground under relentless Allied air attack. The Luftwaffe, reduced to fewer than 500 operational aircraft in the West, could not contest the skies. American P-47 Thunderbolts and British Typhoons struck German columns, destroying fuel trucks and artillery. The German perspective at this turning point, American tanks poured through our lines unstoppable, under skies we could not challenge. Allied air superiority, flying over 15,000 sorties in late July, paralyzed German movement, while American logistics delivered 1 million gallons of fuel to sustain the advance. The bocage, once a German advantage, became a trap as American forces outmaneuvered static defenses. By July 30th U.S. troops reached Avranches, opening a corridor to Brittany and the French interior. The U.S. Third Army under Lieutenant General George S. Patton, activated on August 1st, exploited this breakthrough, racing south and east with mechanized units. Patton's armour covered 50 miles in a week, capturing key towns and bridges. The rapid advance disrupted German supply lines, forcing von Kluge to commit his remaining panzers in a desperate counterattack at Mortain on August 7th. American anti-tank guns and air support repelled the assault, destroying over 100 German tanks in 2 days. The Allied advance, coordinated with British and Canadian operations near Caen, set the stage for a decisive blow. By mid-August, American forces swung north toward Argentan, while Canadian and British units pressed south from Falaise, encircling the German 7th Army and elements of the 5th Panzer Army in the Falaise pocket. Over 50,000 German troops with hundreds of tanks and vehicles were trapped. Allied artillery and airstrikes pounded the pocket, creating a kill zone. Though some Germans escaped through a narrowing gap, the pocket's collapse by August 21st cost Germany over 30,000 casualties and 200 tanks. The Falaise Road became a graveyard of burned-out vehicles, a visual testament to American logistical depth and firepower. American soldiers, from tank crews to infantrymen, adapted to the fluid battlefield. Tank commanders used radio coordination to outflank German strongpoints, while infantry rode on Shermans to keep pace. Engineers bridged rivers under fire, enabling supply convoys to follow the advance. Medics and supply units worked tirelessly, ensuring the Third Army's spearheads had fuel and ammunition. The human toll remained high. American casualties in Cobra exceeded 10,000, but the momentum was unmistakable. The German myth of a cohesive Western defense built on bunkers and panzers collapsed as American forces, supported by over 300,000 troops and endless supply chains, turned Normandy into a springboard for liberation. By late August 1944, the American breakout from Normandy, driven by Operation Cobra and the Falaise pocket's destruction, had dismantled German defences across northern France. The U.S. First and Third Armies under Lieutenant General Omar Bradley and Lieutenant General George S. Patton surged east toward Paris and the Seine River, aiming to liberate the French capital and cripple Germany's Western war machine. The German 7th Army, its remnants retreating under Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge, lacked the strength to hold a cohesive line. Corps metric American forces advanced over 200 miles from Normandy to Paris in 3 weeks, supported by 1 million gallons of fuel delivered by August 31st. Patton's Third Army, with its armoured spearheads, raced through open country, capturing Chartres and Orléans while covering 30 miles daily. Sherman tanks, supported by truck-mounted infantry, outpaced German attempts to regroup, exploiting gaps in the enemy's fractured front. The U.S. 9th Air Force, flying over 20,000 sorties in August, destroyed bridges, rail lines, and German convoys, ensuring the Luftwaffe, with fewer than 300 operational aircraft, could not interfere. American logistics, anchored by Normandy's supply hubs, maintained the advance with 1 million gallons of fuel and thousands of tons of ammunition. The number that matters is mobility. American columns moved 200 miles in 3 weeks, stretching German defenses to breaking. The liberation of Paris crystallized the German collapse. On August 19, French resistance fighters, organized as the French Forces of the Interior, launched an uprising engaging German garrisons in street battles. The U.S. 4th Infantry Division, alongside General Philippe Leclerc's French 2nd Armoured Division, approached from Normandy, reaching the city's outskirts by August 24. After brief clashes with German rearguard units, American and French troops entered Paris on August 25, met by jubilant crowds. General Dietrich von Choltitz, the German commander, surrendered, sparing the city from destruction. German perspective. At this turning point, Allied tanks flooded our lines. Paris fell as our retreat collapsed. The city's fall ended German control over northern France, a strategic and symbolic defeat. Germany's Western Front disintegrated. Without French ports, airfields, or rail networks, the Wehrmacht retreated toward the Siegfried Line, harried by Allied airstrikes. Hitler's insistence on holding ground cost entire divisions destroyed or captured in futile stands. By September, first American forces crossed the Meuse River over 300 miles from Normandy, while British and Canadian armies advanced north. The Atlantic Wall, once Germany's bulwark, was irrelevant against an opponent that could project over 300,000 troops and sustain rapid maneuver. American casualties exceeding 30,000 in August were offset by a training pipeline that kept divisions combat-ready, a luxury Germany no longer had. American soldiers drove the campaign's success. Tank crews coordinating via radio bypassed strongpoints to maintain speed, while infantrymen rode on Shermans to keep pace. Engineers rebuilt bridges under fire, ensuring supply lines followed the advance. Quartermasters managed convoys, delivering 1 million gallons of fuel, sustaining mechanized units across vast distances. French civilians freed from occupation provided local knowledge guiding U.S. patrols through villages. The human effort from privates to generals reflected a system built on adaptability and depth. The German army bled dry in Normandy could not match this resilience, its experienced units gone and its replacements undertrained. The strategic shift was undeniable. Northern France's loss crippled Germany's ability to fight in the west, while Soviet advances in the east compounded the pressure. The U.S. to approach integrated amphibious airborne and mechanized operations, backed by unmatched logistics, proved decisive. Normandy's beaches, where the campaign began, were now distant as American forces, with over 300,000 troops, stood poised to cross the German frontier. The war's momentum turned on June 6 and, sealed in the summer's fighting, pointed toward Germany's heart, with the Allies driving forward as Hitler's war machine faltered. By September 1944, the American armies, having liberated northern France, pressed toward Germany's western border, aiming to cross the Rhine River and strike into the Ruhr, the industrial heart of Hitler's war machine. The U.S. 1st and 3rd Armies under Generals Omar Bradley and George S. Patton advanced through Belgium and Luxembourg, while the newly activated U.S. 9th Army joined the effort. German forces under Field Marshal Walter Model scrambled to defend the Siegfried Line, a network of fortifications along the frontier. Corps metric American forces advanced over 400 miles from Normandy to the German border by October, supported by 2 million gallons of fuel. The terrain shifted from France's open fields to Belgium's forests and rivers, slowing the American advance. Patton's Third Army, racing toward the Moselle River, encountered stiff resistance from German panzer brigades near Metz, where fortified positions and muddy ground bogged down tanks. The U.S. 1st Army under Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges pushed through the Hurtgen Forest, a dense hilly region where German artillery and mines inflicted heavy losses. Allied air forces, flying over 15,000 sorties in September, targeted German supply lines, but overcast weather often grounded planes. American logistics, with supply depots now in Antwerp and Cherbourg, delivered 2 million gallons of fuel, though stretched lines, strained truck convoys. German defences, though weakened, showed resilience. Model replacing von Kluge reorganized shattered units, using the Siegfried Line's bunkers and anti-tank obstacles to delay the Allies. The German perspective at this turning point: Allied numbers overwhelmed us, but our fortifications slowed their tanks. Hitler's orders to hold every inch forced German divisions into costly stands, but conscripted troops and Volkssturm militia bolstered their ranks. The Luftwaffe, with fewer than 200 fighters in the west, could not challenge Allied air superiority, leaving German movements vulnerable to P-47 Thunderbolt strikes. American adaptability shone through. Infantry developed small unit tactics to clear forest bunkers, using flamethrowers and demolitions. Engineers bridged the Moselle under fire, enabling armoured crossings. Patton's Third Army, after stalling at Metz, outflanked German positions by October, capturing Nancy. The U.S. Ninth Army, under Lieutenant General William Simpson, secured Aachen, the first German city to fall after intense urban fighting. Casualties mounted over 40,000 in September, but American divisions, reinforced by fresh troops, maintained pressure. The number that matters is supply. 2 million gallons of fuel kept 400,000 troops moving toward the Rhine. The human element remained critical. Tank crews navigating muddy tracks relied on radio coordination to bypass strongpoints. Infantrymen, soaked and exhausted, fought house to house in Aachen, supported by artillery firing 10,000 rounds daily. Quartermasters working through rain ensured ammunition reached the front. Belgian civilians, like their French counterparts, provided intelligence marking German positions. The American system, built on initiative and industrial depth, outmatched a German army that, despite stubborn defense, lacked fuel-experienced troops and air cover. By November, U.S. snow forces stood at the Ruhr River 50 miles from the Rhine, poised for the final push. The broader campaign underscored Normandy's legacy. The American ability to land, break out, and sustain a 400-mile advance validated the integrated operations honed on D-Day. Germany, facing Allied armies in the west and Soviet forces in the east, could not replace its losses. The Siegfried Line, like the Atlantic Wall, slowed, but could not stop the U.S. advance. With over 400,000 troops and unmatched logistics, American forces turned Western Europe into a battlefield, where Germany's defeat became inevitable, building on the decisive summer in Normandy. By December 1944, American forces poised along Germany's western frontier faced a harsh winter and a German army desperate to regain the initiative. The U.S. 1st, 3rd and 9th Armies under General Omar Bradley's 12th Army Group prepared to cross the Ruhr River and assault the Rhine, targeting Germany's Ruhr industrial region. Adolf Hitler, defying his generals, launched Operation Wacht am Rhein, a surprise counteroffensive through the Ardennes forest, aiming to split Allied armies and recapture Antwerp's port. Core metric American forces deployed over 400,000 troops in the Ardennes by January 1945, supported by 3 million gallons of fuel. The German assault began on December 16th under fog that grounded Allied aircraft, catching American units in the thinly held Ardennes sector off guard. The German 5th and 6th Panzer Armies, with over 200,000 troops and 1,000 tanks, smashed through the U.S. 1st Army's 8th Corps, creating a 60-mile bulge in the Allied line. Snow-covered roads and dense forests favored German armor, while American outposts, like those of the 99th Infantry Division, faced overwhelming assaults. Fuel shortages, however, limited German mobility. Panzers relied on capturing U.S. supply dumps, a gamble that strained their advance. The number that matters is endurance. American defenders held key road junctions despite 20% losses in some units. American resilience turned the tide. The 101st Airborne Division rushed to Bastogne, defended the town's vital crossroads, enduring siege conditions without heavy weapons. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, as Supreme Commander, redirected the U.S. Third Army north with Lieutenant General George S. Patton's divisions covering 70 miles in 48 hours to relieve Bastogne. By December 23, clearing skies allowed the U.S. 9th Air Force to fly over 10,000 sorties, destroying German tanks and supply trucks. American logistics delivering 3 million gallons of fuel sustained counterattacks, while German panzers, stalled by fuel shortages, could not exploit early gains. The German perspective at this turning point, American resistance at Bastogne and Allied planes crushed our advance. Fuel ran dry. The Bulge's defense showcased American adaptability. Infantry, like the 2nd Infantry Division, held ridges at Elsenborn, blocking German routes north. Engineers blew bridges to slow panzer columns, while artillery fired 20,000 rounds daily to disrupt German infantry. Tank destroyers, such as the 7th Armoured Divisions, ambushed German armour in foggy valleys, exploiting narrow roads. The human cost was severe. American casualties reached 80,000 by January, but replacements and supplies flowed steadily. Bastogne's defenders, supplied by airdrops, held out until Patton's 4th Armoured Division broke through on December 26, restoring the line. By January 1945, the German offensive collapsed. The 5th and 6th Panzer Armies, depleted by losses of over 600 tanks and 80,000 men, retreated under Allied counterattacks. The U.S. 1st and 3rd Armies, with over 400,000 troops, erased the Bulge by January 25, regaining lost ground. The Ardennes, meant to be Germany's last stand in the West, instead exhausted its reserves, leaving the Siegfried Line vulnerable. American air superiority, with 15,000 sorties in January and logistics, including 3 million gallons of fuel, ensured the counteroffensive's failure. Germany's hope of splitting the Allies died in the snow as U.S. forces proved they could absorb a surprise blow and respond with overwhelming force. American soldiers, from paratroopers to tank crews, defined the battle's outcome. Medics treated frostbite and wounds in sub-zero conditions, while quartermasters rerouted fuel convoys to stranded units. Infantrymen, equipped with winter gear, rushed from depots, fought in blizzards, holding foxholes against panzer assaults. Local Belgian civilians, risking execution, guided U.S. patrols through snowbound trails, providing intelligence on German movements. The American system, built on rapid reinforcement and industrial depth, outmatched a German army that burned its last reserves. The Bulge, far from reversing Normandy's gains, accelerated Germany's collapse as U.S. forces, now battle-hardened, prepared to cross the Rhine and end the war in Europe. Section 7. Final push, crossing the Rhine and Germany's defeat. Previous. Section. Text. The Bulge, far from reversing Normandy's gains, accelerated Germany's collapse as U.S. forces, now battle-hardened, prepared to cross the Rhine and end the war in Europe. By March 1945, American armies, having repelled Germany's Ardennes counteroffensive, stood at the Rhine River, the last major barrier to Germany's industrial core. The U.S. 1st, 3rd and 9th Armies, under General Omar Bradley's 12th Army Group, aimed to breach the Rhine, capture the Ruhr, and force Germany's surrender. The German Army Group B, under Field Marshal Walter Model, defended with depleted divisions, relying on the Rhine's natural defences and the Siegfried Line's remnants. Core metric American forces deployed over 500,000 troops across the Rhine by April 1945, supported by 4 million gallons of fuel. The Rhine crossing began unexpectedly. On March 7th, the U.S. 1st Army's 9th Armoured Division captured the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen intact despite German demolition attempts. Engineers reinforced the bridge under fire, allowing infantry and tanks to pour across. By March 10th, over 10,000 troops established a bridgehead, supported by artillery firing 15,000 rounds daily. Elsewhere, the U.S. 3rd Army under Lieutenant General George S. Patton crossed south at Oppenheim on March 22nd, using pontoon bridges built in 8 hours. The U.S. 9th Air Force flew 12,000 sorties in March, targeting German reinforcements, while the Luftwaffe, with fewer than 100 operational fighters, offered no resistance. The number that matters is speed. American bridgeheads expanded 20 miles deep in 1 week. German defences crumbled. Model's forces reduced to under 200,000 men, lacked fuel and ammunition, with panzer divisions fielding fewer than 50 tanks. Hitler's orders to hold the Rhine at all costs left units exposed to Allied air and artillery bombardment. The German perspective at this turning point: American bridges multiplied across the Rhine, our lines broke under their relentless advance. The Wehrmacht bled dry in Normandy, and the bulge could not replace losses, while American logistics delivering 4 million gallons of fuel sustained rapid maneuver. By late March, over 500,000 U.S. troops were east of the Rhine, outnumbering German defenders 3-1. The Ruhr encirclement sealed Germany's fate. In April, the U.S. 1st and 9th Armies linked up at Lippstadt, trapping Model's Army Group B, over 300,000 troops in a pocket. American armor, supported by infantry, reduced the pocket by April 18th, capturing or destroying 150 tanks and thousands of vehicles. Patton's Third Army drove east, reaching the Elbe River by mid-April, where US and Soviet forces met. Allied air superiority, with over 20,000 sorties in April, demolished German supply lines, while US artillery fired 10,000 rounds daily to support ground advances. The German war machine, stripped of industry and mobility, collapsed under the weight of American numbers and firepower. American soldiers drove the campaign's success. Tank crews navigating muddy spring terrain used radio coordination to outflank German strongpoints. Engineers working under shellfire built pontoon bridges capable of supporting 60-ton loads. Infantrymen, advancing through ruined towns, cleared bunkers with grenades and flamethrowers, often fighting house to house. Quartermasters ensured 4 million gallons of fuel reached the front, sustaining over 500,000 troops across a 300-mile front. German civilians facing defeat offered little resistance, while liberated forced laborers provided intelligence on Wehrmacht positions. The human toll: American casualties exceeded 20,000 in March, reflected the campaign's intensity, but replacements kept divisions at strength. The war's endgame unfolded rapidly. With the Ruhr lost, Germany's ability to produce weapons or fuel vanished. Berlin, now under Soviet assault, was indefensible. On April 30th, Adolf Hitler committed suicide, and on May 7th, German representatives signed an unconditional surrender at Reims. The American contribution from Normandy's beaches to the Rhine's bridges proved decisive. The U.S. system, amphibious landings, airborne operations, mechanized warfare, and unmatched logistics sustained a campaign that broke Hitler's Western defenses and enabled the Allies to end the war in Europe. Normandy's legacy, where over 500,000 troops began, the liberation culminated in a victory that reshaped the continent, ensuring Germany's total defeat.